Now, you predicted, you were revealed, in fact, that, on social media, that you understood that, contrary to expectations, he would be pleading guilty to all of these charges. Now, obviously, it didn't surprise you, but it did surprise everybody else. I mean, there must have been something of an atmosphere of shock in the courtroom today.
Well, actually, it was a surprise to me, and it was a surprise to the families, and it seems to a lot of the legal team and police around the families this morning. I knew early, a couple of weeks ago, really, that the defence was not going to be presenting a defence. They were simply going to allow the prosecution to put their evidence forward and let it speak for itself, rather than, let's say, let Rudakubana incriminate himself. By going into the dreadful detail of his motivations.
So, yeah, so, but a shock to everyone that he decided to admit it. But I'm assuming that would be on the same basis. I mean, if they weren't going to, as it were, enter any kind of case on behalf of Rudakubana, did that entail pleading guilty, not maintaining any kind of innocence?
No. So, as I've been in communications with the family ever since this has happened, they were picked up early this morning and taken to a police station to go through some of the body cam footage of the attack and the aftermath of the attack ahead of the trial, so that they wouldn't be too distraught when they had to watch it again in the courtroom. Now, they wouldn't have subjected the families to that if that wasn't going to happen. The families were there watching, mid watching this body cam stuff, when a police officer came in, took all the solicitors away, and they were told that he was pleading guilty, and there was no time to get them to the courtroom before this had happened, which is why the families were not there today.
So, as of this morning, families were being shown some of the videos that were filmed there in preparation for them being having to endure them in court, on the assumption that he was going to fight a not guilty case. Is it your feeling, Charlie, or is it your understanding that this apparent change in the direction of travel has happened all of a sudden today, or maybe late yesterday? Is this a late kind of volte-face?
It seems that this has happened literally minutes before Rudakubana was due to take to the stand. Now, the trial did start 45 minutes late. Well, there wasn't a trial, but proceedings started 45 minutes late. This might have something to do with it. But the families had a right to be there to see this man who attacked their children, murdered some of their children in the flesh, and to hear this plea entered, and they didn't get that opportunity because they could not get the families there fast enough. This was a snap decision, and we kind of need to know why this change in tax has happened. They've had weeks to prepare. This is strange.
It does seem very, very strange. Now, am I right that he will be sentenced, or it's scheduled for his sentencing on Thursday? Is that right?
Yep, Thursday, 11 o'clock at Liverpool Crown Court. We don't know what the sentencing will be yet. The judge indicated at proceedings today that he will receive a life sentence. Now, what that means for someone under the age of 21 is kind of up for debate, because it will rely a lot upon the judge's own position, as well as the additional evidence that is being presented in the court in the next 2 days, including a mental health file.
Okay, and I gather that throughout his various appearances, including today, that Rudakubana has been a kind of rather sort of reluctant figure, a bit sulky, hasn't really engaged with the proceedings, and in fact has kept a sort of mask on at all time. So is that the impression that's come across from him, that you know, he's not exactly cooperating with this legal process?
He's certainly not been cooperating. I think this is indicated by the judge saying at every instance, every hearing that they've had, that he should cooperate with the people that are there to help him. It seems there has been little of that. There's been little of communication with the police in his interviews. But I wouldn't say it's a kind of reluctance. I'd say it's almost an arrogance. It's not that he's had a mask on, it's that he's been struggling to put a mask on. There's a reason he has been hiding his face, and that is because he has been smirking behind his hand throughout these proceedings. I can't go into exactly why I know this, but I will be able to in a couple of days.
He's been smirking. He's smirking. I've heard it from other sources, Charlie, and
he's rather
so
he
thinks he's pleased with himself, and he thinks this is all quite amusing, does he?
Yeah, I mean, he was asked to stand. He's never given his name, but he was asked today to stand before the court, and he did not get up. Now, to me, that tells me he has contempt for the whole process, for the people prosecuting him, for the people trying to defend him, for the justice system itself, and most of all the families. The disrespect. He has utter contempt for what he's being forced through in his mind, I imagine. And yeah, no sympathy at all should be lived up towards this monster.
I wonder how his attitude might change when he starts to serve what I imagine will be several life sentences. I wonder how his fellow prisoners might react to having them among him. I would say that his arrogant smirk may fairly soon be wiped off his face. I don't know if you knew about any of this, Charlie, last point, but it has emerged today since his guilty pleas. The Guardian newspaper, to its credit, had this ready, and they've revealed today that before anyone knew who Axel Rudakubana was, before his horrific killing of those kids and attempted killings of the other poor victims, that he was 3 times referred to the government's counter-extremism scheme, PREVENT, but was rejected on the basis that someone decided that his stated desire to massacre school kids, to massacre children, was not related to terrorism. Now, that does seem to be true. That is something of a scandal, is it not?
It's so much worse than this. So it's not just PREVENT. I mean, I can reveal that I've yet to see documentation, but I've had it sort of confirmed by several different sources, including a police officer and several social workers. He was known to social services, was a Category 4, which is the highest level that a child can be. And he was demoted to a Category 3, not too far before the Southport stabbing, because, quote, there was not enough resources and they had 100 people on the waiting list. So, I mean, I knew about this. I also had to sit on the fact that he had attempted to attack his school and was apprehended by police on the way to this attack, literally 1 week before. Now, unfortunately, you know, reporters like you and I have had to sit on this for weeks, if not months, because we were expecting this information to be included in the trial. So yeah, unfortunately, everyone got the head start on me because I hadn't written mine up yet.
But Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary today, has announced a full public inquiry into these murders and the story behind them. So, you know, in fairness, we sort of thought that these guilty pleas might be quite handy for the establishment, for the government, who obviously have not handled Rudakubana's case very well. But to be fair, a public inquiry might be quite embarrassing for the authorities, but from what you're saying.
It could be extremely embarrassing. I think significant swathes of the front bench are going to have to go. Several senior figures within, you know, Merseyside and the councils and authorities there are going to have to go. There is no covering this up. I for one, am going to make sure of that. But this is not good news. These guilty pleas. It's good news for the families. They won't have to endure going through every single detail of how their children were murdered and mutilated. But this is incredibly fortuitous for the government, who can throw out a lot of details and go, well, that's everything. And unfortunately, a lot of people will go, oh, well, it must be then, because these are so horrific. But actually, I think it's going to be used as a guide to cover up the truly horrific details that would move people in this country.
Yeah, but a public inquiry is going to unearth the gory details, I think, I hope. And you're saying, from what you know, Charlie, I just want to take you back to what you just said, that you think that the failings are so disastrous here that certain front bench politicians may have to quit.
I mean, I think Starmer has to go, as do Yvette Cooper, taking to a national stage and calling great swathes of the country far right for having concerns about how this case was being handled. They felt they were being lied to. They knew they were being lied to. And people were put in jail, and some still are in jail. And of course, Peter Lynch is now dead for saying some rather inconvenient truths that were inflammatory. Yes, they were in contradiction of Communications Act. Yes, but they were said from a genuine anger that turns out to be utterly true in origin.
Yeah, there was a fit. They felt that there was a terrorist element to this. We were told, no, 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 you far-right troublemakers, you must stop spreading this misinformation. Well, essentially, it was not misinformation. The government, the Crown Prosecution Service, the local police told us it was misinformation to suggest there was anything to do with terrorism here. I think some serious questions are going to have to be answered here, Charlie. Charlie, we'll keep in touch. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much.